We have been on a Zen 5 RAM crusade. I mean, I have just been tearing through kits. And I will be honest with you, it's not because I love memory. In fact, trying to find stability in overclocking memory is like probably one of the hardest things you can do trying to get your rig like really dialed in. But honestly, the reason why is I was just so bored. Gaming hardware has just gotten terrible lately. I mean, video cards were so stagnant. Um, Not now. I mean, the flop of the Nvidia launch and every video card ever being sold out, that will be a whole movie video or whatever of its own. But there's a lot of stuff to cover there. So I find video cards to be much more fun. So I'm excited to get back to that because there's a lot of new stuff to do and I got a lot of cool stuff to cover. I'm not that into the 5000 series from Nvidia. I think most of it's garbage, but that'll be a whole nother topic, and that's the stuff I'm excited to get back to. Um, the last thing I was super excited about in hardware was the 9800 X3D launch and the new PBO, and that was awesome. And I had a great time playing around with that. And then that was done, and it was like, what else can we do? Memory, and I just started going down rabbit holes with this memory. So I think at this point in time, I got so many kits. I'm not going to need to buy a new kit of memory for quite a few builds. I've got excess kits now at this point. But what I want to cover is I think this is it. I found my forever kit for my 9800 X3D, and I'm pretty happy with it. And we're going to talk about some pros and cons of it, and then what we did with it, and then kind of at the end I'm going to cover because I've had a lot of different memory videos, and some of them are on my 9950X, and some of them I've been on the 9800X3D, and I've gotten a lot of different questions on them. So at the end of this video, since I consider this like my culminating event, this is my last video for memory for a while. I'm going to kind of go over my final takes. And there's going to be a little less data in this one because I wanted to just get this kit down and dirty tested to make sure I was going to be happy with it so I can move on to bigger and better things like video cards. And there's the new X3D processors coming out and all sorts of exciting stuff that I'm much more excited about. But I wanted to feel like I closed this chapter. So what did I get? We got the new G.Skill 64 gig kit, DDR5 6000 CL26, and I've got it's my bad I haven't been, but I've included the part number down here for you, and then you can see I paid a whopping $309 for it. So this is not for the faint of wallet. I think it has come down a little bit, save you guys a couple bucks. I think I checked, it's like $299 now. But just a quick recap, my computer's got that 9800 X3D. It's in the Asus Hero Crosshair, yada, yada, yada board. Um, and that's about it. So that's the basic setup. And first of all, right out of the box, this kit runs great. The fact that it can do 6000 CL26 at 1.4 volts is awesome. This is going to be some of your highest bend memory. And then there's a couple of very unique things about this kit. This is a 64 gig Expo kit. And that's been one thing I've kind of complained about is it's not really a huge difference, but between XMP for Intel and Expo for AMD, and you can use them vice versa either way. But Expo has traditionally just been the 32 gig 6000 CL30 kits, and they just don't have a whole lot of variation in them. So if you are somebody that's like, well, I want to buy the RAM. I know like a lot of people feel this way when they don't have a real solid grasp on manually tuning things or what you can and can't do. Like they're worried about like, oh, is this memory going to work? And there's some reassurance, getting an Expo kit that it's like, hey, these settings were set up for an AMD processor. Now, if you're spending $300 on your RAM kit, you probably are willing to invest. So you probably hopefully know a little bit about enough to be dangerous on there. But you can use XMP or Expo. It just is nice to see Expo kits kind of expanding what they are included on. So 64 gig dual rank kit, 6000 CL26. And I did a couple things. I tested it just at its Expo settings, and then I did a little bit of a tune on it. So we're going to cover that first before we look at the actual performance. So over here on the CPU Z, you can see where I actually pulled, like, this is the actual Expo setting. So it'd be 6000, which is going to be 300 or 3000 megahertz, and then CL26, and then Rastacast 36, 36, TRAS 96, TRC 132. So over here is what I actually currently have set up. And I've got a lot of people ask me like, "Oh, how do you tune the RAM? How do you tune the RAM? What's your strategy?" Um, you'll find that is the more you work with certain memory kits, the more you'll kind of just see like generally what works. And it's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of looking at like, hey, what are other people generally doing? And then trying to fine tune for my system and then understanding, what's going to require more voltage, what's going to require, maybe be a little bit easier on voltage. I'm not going to lie to you. This kit is the nicest kit of RAM I have, but I just was absolutely lazy. So here's the keys to the castle of what I did. The Asus board actually has a lot of like known profiles in it. So the first thing I did was load up Expo. I saw what the base values were at. Then I loaded known profiles via Asus for 6200 and saw if it tightened anything up. It did. It tightened a lot of the subtimings up. I was happy with that. But it changed a couple of different things, if I remember right, like TRP, TRAS. It changed a couple of things. Well, I was happy with the 26, 36, 36 because I felt like that was already a pretty good setup that I was going to be happy with. What I really wanted to tighten up was the TRAS and the TRC. And this is one of those learning points because initially I was trying to get my TRAS as tight as I would do on a single rank kit because that's predominantly what I use. I use a lot of the 32 gig kits. I just think they're the best bang for the buck right now on the market. And that's one of those things where just like I couldn't get it to boot, and I was like, why is this not working? This always works for me. And a quick Google search, and somebody way smarter than me, I saw Buildzoid, and he kind of ran into the same thing. He was like, hey, on these dual rank kits, I couldn't get TRAS as low. So that was like my first clue to like, hey, what's going wrong here? Because I didn't think I was getting that aggressive, but I guess on the dual rank kit I was. So for this one value, just copied and pasted. It was like, hey, 40 worked for him, 40 should work for me. And then when you come down to the TRC, the Expo kits always have it. You know, they always have these settings way too high. I don't know. You can always tighten those up. So TRC is easy. TRP plus TRAS, got your TRC. So 40 plus 36, 76. There you go. And then the rest of this was pretty much already pre-filled by the known profile. And probably eventually I will go through here and tweak it a little bit more and see if there's anything to be gained. But really, this right here is where you make your money. And then your refresh, max that out because my temperatures are great. And if I need it, I'll just put cooling on it because I have a couple of these little memory cooling fans that I can just strap on there. And that's really where you're going to make your money. So that was my lazy man's way. It was kind of like a combo. Like I took a known profile, made sure it was tighter than Expo, used half of my Expo settings still, and then I got the one key by just looking at somebody else, like, hey, what's working for other people? And then that kind of put it all together for me. I haven't done extensive testing on this, but and I will eventually because this is my daily driver. But I wanted to get out. I'm pretty sure I have like a 90% solution here. And I will continue to test it and make sure this is good. And if I need to, I'll continue to tweak. But I think this is a great starting point. And the thing that I like about this kit the most, and this is where you really benefit from the really quality bin parts and paying the money, is this is 6200 at CL26 with relatively tight settings around the whole way. And I'm able to get it in at 1.435 volts on the memory VDD, which that was kind of my challenge to myself because above that, you got to go into high voltage mode on the BIOS. And I'm not afraid to do that. I do that on most of my systems a lot of the times with the cheaper kits, just because you really got to push voltage to get the settings you want. But I was like, I'm going to daily drive this. Let me see if I can get it, you know, on not having to go above the 1.435. And so far, it's done great. I haven't had a single crash on it. I've been running all sorts of benchmarks. It's had no problems. Boots right up. Everything's been great. So once again, I still need to go through and I literally just did this afternoon because I just got this kit in. So I haven't had time to do run overnight testing and stuff like that. But seems like I'm pretty close. I might have to tweak it a little more, but this is pretty close. And I was able to do it at 1.435. 6200 at CL26 at 1.435 is awesome. And that's what you get by having the quality kit. I've been able to take almost all my kits to about 62 and 28 at reasonable. Usually when you start getting down to 26, the voltage starts getting very unreasonable. I did play around with for a minute trying to go 6400, but it immediately was evident that I was going to have to apply a lot more voltage. And I really wasn't trying to go for a max overclock here. I was trying to figure out hey, I've already spent so much money on this freaking computer. Let me just get a really quality RAM kit and get some decently above average performance that I'm comfortable running every day. So that's kind of where we're at now. So we'll get right into the results. For the first couple things, when I got into the games, some settings and drivers and different things had changed. I didn't want to compare head to head because I didn't feel like they were necessarily going to be fair comparisons, but I had some ADA information and a couple information that I had tested on my old kits. So if I go through this so far, I've done my classics, 32 gigs of 6000 CL30. I've done 64 gigs of 6400 CL32. I've done 6400 CL30, 32 gigs, 32 gigs of 6000 CL28, now 64 gigs, 6000 CL26. I've done 8000 CL28, 48 gigs. I've tested so many kits, and this is not all inclusive, but these are some of the Expo profiles I've tested out on the 9800 X3D. So right off the bat, these latencies, just the Expo kits, and then this top one is my light tune on there. And this is just not like Windows safe mode, nothing like that. That's just like a, hey, freshly restarted computer. What do we get? So I know lots of times you'll see significantly lower numbers. This is not really a max effort. It's just like, hey, I booted up my computer, and what do we do? So on the latency, this kit is already just Expo beating the other Expo kits we got here, which we got the 8000, we got the 6000 CL30, that's like your classic, and then I've got the 6400 CL32 that I had. And I didn't have all the data. Most of my kits I ran through my 9950X because I think the memory controller is a little bit better on it. So I was able to really push some of these sticks on that CPU where my 9800 X3D, it's all right. I don't think it's the best, but it's all right. But you can see the 6000 CL26 shouldn't be a surprise. It's already coming out on top with the latency. And then with the bandwidth, whenever you increase the F clock, it's going to just mathematically, it's going to give you more bandwidth. So you can see here, you get the read speed, you get the read bandwidth increase, a little bit of F clock, and just, I guess, that's really it because this looks really bad on 8000, but when I ran the 8000 at 2200, it was actually really high. And this also did a lot better on the dual CCD CPU as well. But that's kind of how it fell out. This is the most synthetic of synthetic. These numbers are just kind of cool. but I always include them because I take a look at it usually when I first boot up. All right, then we get into Cinebench 24. This definitely put my high score up on this, and people will say like, "Oh, this application is not very memory sensitive." It's a very heavy CPU workload, and you will get some differences in memory kits, as you can see here. So the 6400 CL32 actually was the reigning Expo champion before, and then the CL26 already beat it. And then when I tuned it, of course, and I don't have all of the all these kits tune data on here, but this actually was the top, and I put probably the least amount of effort into tuning this kit as well. Probably going to continue to refine it, but uh, it definitely took the cake. 1434 on a 9800 X3D. I think that's pretty decent. I don't know. I haven't really looked up what everybody else is getting, but it seemed like a good little jump to me. I felt good that I was breaking 1400. I think that's kind of like the bar. Come up to Timespy Extreme. So this is where there's a couple different factors that had changed on the computer. So I didn't want to compare all the kits, but I wanted to look at the scores and then kind of the improvement through tuning. So first of all, when I was doing my 9950X and my 4080, I was like accidentally getting #1 in the world for my configuration. And that's just because that's not where like the big dogs play. It's just a random configuration. It's not really considered probably like optimized. It's like a workstation CPU with, the 4080 Super. Um, it's like whatever. But I literally scored #1 in the world on that setup when I was doing my RAM testing, just trying to figure out what the best memory was. And I was like, oh, hey, I'm #1. You definitely are not going to accidentally do that with a 9800 X3D and a 4090, because for a while there, it was the world's fastest gaming CPU and the world's fastest GPU. So this is like where the big dogs are playing. Um, but still, I felt pretty good about it because with the Expo kit, I think we were like 90th percentile or something. Like we were beating 90% of the setups. And then when I put a little tune on there, we were like 92nd. Like we were beating 92% of all builds with comparable hardware. So that's definitely putting you, probably that's like the top third of the bell curve. And on this test, that the memory can really make a pretty decent difference, because when everybody's running the exact same hardware, it's going to be the smallest little thing that's going to make you stand out. And so I was pretty happy with that to be in that top 10%, top 8%. Um, I know I've got a pretty decent setup here because this is kind of where the big dogs are playing, is in that 9800 X3D and the 4090. So that was good. For Counter Strike, so getting into like an actual game instead of the synthetic stuff. Couple things I want to point out here is a lot of people will say stuff like, "Oh, the X3D processors aren't that memory sensitive," or yada 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 yada. This is already a very high performing kit, and sure, your average you pick up like 25 FPS. That's cool, I guess. But the huge news to me is these 1% lows. So look, when I added the tune on here, this is what, like 58 FPS or something like that on the 1% lows. And this is at 1080p high settings. Um, that's that's pretty awesome, because that's well within probably, if you're on a competitive monitor's like refresh rate, and picking up the 1% lows to like max out your refresh rate, it's like you're never gonna dip. Um, that's awesome. So having the right memory and getting it tuned, big difference there. And then Final Fantasy Dawntrail. This one wasn't as big, but you can kind of see it came up kind of more evenly. So you got about 12 FPS on the average, and you picked up 6 on the 1% lows. So I'd be willing to bet if I tested every game in my inventory, you'd be doing that you'd be probably picking up, you know, 5 to 10 FPS everywhere. So when it comes to value for like performance, RAM is definitely not where it's at. But if you're already buying like the fastest CPU, a ridiculously expensive motherboard, a $2,000, $3,000 video card these days, it's like might as well splurge a little on the memory, spend an extra $100. So we'll get into the conclusion here. Basically, it's very nice bins, great performance out of the box, and it's easy to tune, and it doesn't require a ton of voltage. You could probably do this on a lot of different kits, but the lower quality kits, you're just going to take more and more voltage to do it. You're going to need more active cooling, and you know, whether it degrades or not, only time will tell. But definitely a quality kit. Um, I mentioned Buildzoid earlier. I think he had one of these kits, and I was just trying to tighten it up and kind of build my daily driver. I think he took one of these to like 8,000 CL something low. I mean, these are going to do whatever you want them to do. They're just extremely high quality. Now, the one thing is are they available? I ordered this off a Newegg, like I think like a month or two ago, and I was like waitlisted, and then I'd honestly forgot I ordered it. This was when I was doing a lot of my RAM testing. And then all of a sudden one day I got this email like, "Hey, your order's shipped." And I was like, "What's that? I haven't ordered anything." And I was like, "Oh, holy cow, this RAM kit's coming in." Uh, so also because this is kind of like my conclusion to doing a bunch of the memory testing, I think I've about had my fill, and hopefully there's more exciting stuff to look forward to in the future. Um, you know, if anything comes into stock ever, because that's just the name of the game. I guess we're back in COVID or something, and just everybody's gonna sell out forever. Uh, but not to get sidetracked again, I'm gonna cover kind of what I think the best options are out of all the memory I've tested, because I've just tested so much at this point. So maybe you're watching this video and you don't have a 9800X 3D, you're just trying to get an idea for AM5 RAM. Uh, if you're building absolutely budget, and I've done a lot of budget AM5 builds, I've done 7500Fs, I've done 7600s, 9600s, uh, I've done a bunch of them. There is absolutely nothing wrong, and it is awesome how cheap this stuff has gotten. My pick's always been the TEAMGROUP T Create. There's no RGB or anything on it. You can make a nice clean build. It's 32 gigs, 6000 CL30. That's enough to game on. Part numbers here, and it's as low. I think it's like $82 right now. And that's just awesome because DDR5, it's been on the more expensive side for a while, and it's finally coming down. I would say probably 90% of people are going to be completely good right here, because for that dollar amount, it is an extreme cliff of diminishing returns where you're spending more and more money, and you're talking like a couple FPS. If you want a little bit more than budget, but you don't want to go insane, and you were planning on spending that about $100 to $150, these are what I consider my best gamer options. The 32 gigs is still more than enough, but you're just putting in that little bit extra. So there's kind of two options here. You don't need to have the G.Skill Royal. Just right now, that was like the only one in stock. You can also do the Trident Z5 Neo, but the 6000 CL28. It's just going to have a little bit tighter timings on the Expo kit. It's just a little bit extra, and if you do want to get into tuning it, um, this is probably a little bit of a higher bend part, and you're going to have an easier time tuning it. These really cheap 6000 CL30, they might already be like barely meeting that standard of like, yeah, it's going to run Expo, but it might not have a whole lot more in the tank. When you spend a little bit extra, you get the 6000 CL28, and or if you don't want the Royal and the Neos out at that, I put in here, you can also do the 6400 CL30. To me, I bought both of these. I played around with both of them. I think they're basically the same quality wise. It's just what Expo profile they loaded on it based on what they thought was going to sell. So you can go either way on these. Like you can take this to 6200 CL28, or you can take this down to 6200 CL28, or probably either one of them, if your CPU will support it, could do 6400 CL28 with not that much voltage. For most of these kits, 28's easy up to 6400. It's when you try to get to that CL26 that you either need a much more expensive kit or run a lot of voltage, in my experience. But either one of these, you're looking at about 120 to 150 bucks, depending on what kit you get. I think this would be like the reasonable middle ground of, you know, it's a little bit more expensive. It's probably still not great bang for the buck because the difference you're going to have in performance is going to be minimal. But if you're someone who you're like, I want to feel like I got like a little extra, I think those are great kits to consider. The best no budget, no holds bar, I just want to buy the best I can get, I think is this kit that I just tested. So 64 gigs, that's going to be enough for gaming and streaming on the side, and or if you like to have a bunch of Chrome windows open that are just going to eat your memory. 64 gig, it's got plenty. The dual rank kits actually do on some games actually perform a little bit better on AMD CPUs than single rank, like in certain niche things. And then when that's not the case, they're usually about even. I don't know if I've seen a whole lot of losses, which is strange because you think dual rank would have the disadvantage, but it seems like on AMD it's not really the case. So the 64 gig, 6000 CL26, this is going to give you a ton of flexibility for tuning. It's going to give you great out of the box performance. It's probably going to require less voltage to do whatever you want to do than lower bend parts, because this is going to be kind of like the top dog as far as bending goes. And but you're going to pay for it. So $309, you're triple my best gamer option, and you're, you know, like, I don't know, 3.5 times the best budget, but you are getting double the amount of memory. And this is going to kind of be like the peak performance, and this is where you're going to be at. So that's kind of where I stand with that, but I do want to put in my honorable mention. So the kit that I've had is the Team Extreme 48 gigs, so the 2x24 8000 CL38. My 9950X really likes this kit, and I can do a lot with it. So I was able to run it at like 6400 CL26. I was able to run it at 8000 CL34. I was able to do all sorts of stuff with it. My 9800 X3D, for some reason or another, just did not like this kit as much. I was never really able to get it running stable on like different settings that I would want to explore. Uh, so this kind of, well, I'll cover one more thing first. The 8000 CL38 on a single CCD processor like the 9800 X3D, I would not just buy this and run it at Expo. It seems like a good deal because it's like good middle ground. It's 48 gigs rather than 32. It's 249 instead of 300. But the 8000 CL38, I know I've seen people that say they've had amazing results with it. In the XMP like factory settings, I personally have not had great results. Now, if you're comfortable tuning, these kits can do great. Like on my 9950X, this kit did great. You don't have to leave it at 8000. You can bring it down to 6400 and run it 1-to-1. You can leave it at 8000, 2-to-1, and try to get the latency down. Like you can do all sorts of stuff with it. And it is kind of a good middle ground because it's 48 gigs and it's not as expensive. But that kind of brings me to my next thing is CPUs and DDR5 and the memory controllers. It's kind of a luck of the draw type thing. So, um, you know, you could be in a bad situation where you buy a very, very expensive kit and your CPU just doesn't have a great memory controller. And that is just not going to be a good time because you're going to be like, I paid all this money and my CPU is just having a heck of a time with it. Um, it's like I would almost want to just like function check my CPU first and be like, oh, if I got a Rockstar CPU, like now it's time I invest in some killer RAM because I'm going to be able to, you know, overclock this stuff to the moon. But this is kind of a two-part process. So, um, if you're doing your one and done and your only build, it's kind of unfortunate because you don't really know what you're going to get until you put it all together. Uh, I have the benefit that I have enough computers and enough kits that I can kind of swap them all around and see who my top dogs are. And the 9950X definitely has a better memory controller in my case than my 9800X 3D, which is why I think it did so well with this Extreme. And I've even seen people that are like, oh, my processor really hated 1-to-1 mode, but it killed in 2-to-1 modes. Like 8000 was for me. You know, I've seen different things like that, but you just don't really know until you put it all together. And it really is kind of a lottery in that regard because you might have a CPU that overclocks really well, but then has a poor memory controller. You might have a CPU that doesn't overclock well, but has a great memory controller. Or you could just have a dud, or you could have, you know, the only thing the manufacturer guarantees you is that it's going to meet the manufacturer, you know, stated uh, minimums. And anything beyond that is just, you know, that's the game, right? You're just trying to squeeze every little bit you can out of it for fun. And sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. But that's kind of where I'm at. I've spent more time just playing around with memory than I thought I ever would. And I think I'm satisfied now. And I don't think I want to really mess around with it too much. It was exciting for a bit because DDR5's been having some huge advancements. Like getting an Expo kit that's CL26 is insane. So I'm hoping that I'm hoping, I think this is going to be pretty peak for a while. You know, they're coming out with, like the fast QDIMM stuff and all that, but that's for Intel. AMD can't even really take advantage of it, and maybe next time around we'll get to play around with that. But I think this is where I'm staying. I'm gonna keep this kit in my 9800X 3D, and I'm probably gonna keep this kit. I just gotta decide what I want my final tune to be in the 9950X. That's kind of where I stand. I will have all of these kits with their part numbers linked in the description below, and those will be affiliate links. So if you do use them, it will help the channel out, and I appreciate it. But hopefully, you enjoyed the content. If you do, give me a like and a subscribe, and good luck building.